The morning started like any other Tuesday in the small farming town of Millbrook. Sarah Chun walked to school with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, her mind focused on the history test she had studied for until midnight. At 17, she was the kind of student teachers loved, quiet, hardworking, and always ready with the right answer. Her parents had immigrated from Taiwan when she was 5, and they had drilled into her the importance of education and keeping her head down. Sarah never imagined that by sunset, she would be holding a military-grade sniper rifle while alien destroyers blocked out the sun above her hometown. The first sign something was wrong came during third-period chemistry. Mrs. Rodriguez was explaining molecular bonds when every phone in the classroom began buzzing at once. Students glanced at their screens, their faces shifting from curiosity to confusion to outright terror. Sarah looked at her own phone and saw an emergency alert that made her blood freeze. Unidentified aircraft approaching major cities worldwide. Seek immediate shelter. Within minutes, the principal's voice crackled over the intercom, ordering all students to move to the gymnasium for an emergency assembly. Sarah's hands shook as she gathered her books. Through the classroom window, she could see other students running across the courtyard, some crying, others on phones trying to reach their families. The gymnasium filled with nearly 800 students and teachers, their voices creating a wall of nervous chatter. Principal Martinez stood at the center with a portable radio, his usual calm demeanor replaced by barely contained panic. The local news was reporting the same impossible story from every major city. Massive ships had appeared in Earth's atmosphere without warning. Sarah found herself sitting next to Tommy Rodriguez, a senior she barely knew except by reputation. He was one of those kids who seemed to collect trouble, always in detention for something. But now his usual smirk was gone, replaced by the same fear she saw in every face around her. "My dad's at the military base," Tommy whispered to her, his voice tight. "He sent me a text before they cut communications. So these things aren't from anywhere on Earth." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had always been logical, scientific in her thinking. The idea of life beyond Earth was fascinating in theory, but this was reality crashing down on everything she thought she knew about the world. As if summoned by Tommy's words, the sound of jet engines roared overhead. Everyone in the gymnasium fell silent, looking up at the ceiling as military aircraft screamed past. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to focus on her breathing, a technique her mother had taught her for managing test anxiety. But this wasn't a test she could study for. The radio crackled with an official announcement from the emergency broadcast system. All civilians are advised to remain in secure locations. Military forces are responding to the situation. Repeat, remain where you are and await further instructions. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Sarah, are you safe? We're trying to get to the school, but roads are blocked. Stay calm and stay put. Love you." She typed back quickly. "I'm safe. In the school gym with everyone else. I love you too." Hours passed in that gymnasium. Some students tried to sleep on the hard floor. Others huddled in groups, sharing snacks from vending machines that teachers had broken open. Sarah found herself becoming an unofficial leader, helping organize food distribution and keeping younger students calm. It surprised her how naturally she fell into the role, considering she had always preferred to blend into the background. As afternoon turned to evening, the sounds outside grew more intense. Explosions echoed in the distance, followed by periods of eerie silence. Through the small windows near the gymnasium ceiling, they could see strange lights moving across the sky. That's when General Marcus Kane arrived. Sarah heard the military vehicles before she saw them. Heavy trucks and armored personnel carriers surrounded the school as soldiers in full combat gear entered the building. The students pressed together instinctively as armed men and women filled their safe space. General Kane was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. He walked into the gymnasium with the bearing of someone accustomed to command, but Sarah noticed something else in his expression: desperation. Students and faculty His voice boomed across the space without a microphone. "I'm General Kane, commander of the 42nd Infantry Division. Our situation is critical. The entities that have arrived on our planet have demonstrated hostile intent. They have destroyed military installations in 17 countries and are systematically targeting population centers." A student near the front raised her hand shakily. "What do they want?" Kane's jaw tightened. "We don't know. They haven't attempted communication. What we do know is that conventional military tactics are proving insufficient against their technology." Sarah felt her stomach drop. If the military couldn't handle this, what hope did any of them have? "Which brings me to why I'm here," Kane continued. "Our preliminary intelligence suggests these beings may have weaknesses we haven't identified. We need every advantage we can get, including perspectives from outside traditional military thinking. We're looking for volunteers, young people who might see solutions that career soldiers have missed." The gymnasium erupted in confused voices. Parents would never allow their children to volunteer for something so dangerous. Sarah herself felt torn between terror and an unexpected surge of determination. Kane raised his hand for silence. "I won't lie to you. This is dangerous beyond anything we've faced as a species. But doing nothing guarantees we lose everything. Those willing to help would receive immediate training in basic combat skills and strategic thinking. You would work alongside military personnel, not alone." Sarah surprised herself by standing up. "General, what makes you think teenagers could help where trained soldiers haven't?" Kane's eyes focused on her, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical force. "Young lady, in my 30 years of military service, I've learned that sometimes the best solutions come from people who don't know something is supposed to be impossible. These beings are operating with technology and tactics we don't understand. We need minds that can think beyond conventional parameters. But we don't know anything about fighting," protested Marcus Webb, the class president. "Neither did our enemies, apparently, when they decided to attack Earth," Kane replied grimly. "The difference is we're going to learn fast, or we're going to die trying." Sarah looked around the gymnasium at her classmates, kids who worried about prom dates and college applications just this morning. Now they were being asked to help save the world. The rational part of her mind screamed that this was insane. But another part, a part she didn't know existed until this moment, was already calculating possibilities. "What kind of training are we talking about?" she asked. Kane studied her for a long moment. "Weapons handling, tactical thinking, basic survival skills. We have portable training facilities that can compress months of instruction into days through advanced simulation technology. But I need to be clear, this isn't a game or an adventure. People will die. Some of you might die." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Her parents had sacrificed everything to give her a safe life in America. They would be horrified if they knew she was even considering this. But then she thought about her little cousin Emily, only 7 years old, probably hiding in a basement somewhere while alien ships destroyed everything her family had worked to build. She thought about her grandmother back in Taiwan, who had lived through war before and always said the young must be willing to fight for the future of the old. "I'll do it," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly across the gymnasium. Kane nodded slowly. "Anyone else?" To her surprise, Tommy Rodriguez stood up. "Yeah, I'm in too." One by one, other students began standing. Not all of them, maybe 30 out of the 800 present, but enough to form the core of what Kane was looking for. "Very well," Kane said. "Those who volunteered, gather your personal items. We leave in 20 minutes. The rest of you will be evacuated to secure facilities outside the combat zones." As Sarah collected her backpack, her phone buzzed with another message from her mother. "Communication networks failing. If you can't reach us, know that we love you and we're proud of who you've become." Sarah stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "I love you too. I'm going to do something important. Trust me." She turned off her phone before she could receive a response. She knew that if she heard her mother's voice, she might lose the resolve that was building inside her. 20 minutes later, Sarah climbed into the back of a military transport truck alongside her volunteering classmates. As they drove away from the school, she caught her last glimpse of Millbrook through the canvas cover. Smoke was rising from several buildings, and those strange lights continued to move across the darkening sky. General Kane sat across from them in the truck, his expression grave. "Before we reach the training facility, I need you all to understand something. The enemy we're facing has technology that makes our most advanced weapons look like stone tools. They've demonstrated the ability to neutralize our aircraft, disable our communications, and destroy our fortified positions with weapons we can't even identify." Sarah swallowed hard. "Then, how are we supposed to fight them?" "By being something they don't expect," Kane replied. "Intelligence suggests these beings operate under a highly structured, hierarchical system. They expect military responses to follow predictable patterns. What they're not prepared for is improvisation, creativity, and the kind of desperate innovation that humans excel at when their backs are against the wall." The truck hit a pothole, jolting everyone inside. Through the canvas, Sarah could hear the distant sound of explosions getting closer. "Sir," Tommy asked, "what happens if we fail?" Kim was quiet for a long moment. "Then, humanity becomes extinct, son. That's not melodrama or military motivation. That's the simple truth we're facing." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Less than 12 hours ago, her biggest worry was a chemistry test. Now she was racing toward a military training facility to learn how to fight beings from another world. The transformation was so complete and so sudden that part of her wondered if this was all some kind of nightmare. But the weight of the rifle that Kane had handed her as they boarded the truck was real enough. The M24 sniper rifle felt impossibly heavy in her hands, its metal cold against her palms. She had never held a weapon before today, had never even considered that she might need to. "Chun," Kane said, using her last name in military fashion. "You ask questions back there. That tells me you think before you act. That's going to keep you alive." Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The truck rounded another corner, and through a gap in the canvas, she saw their destination, a military compound that had been hastily expanded with prefabricated buildings and training facilities. Floodlights illuminated everything in harsh detail, and she could see other trucks arriving with more volunteers from different schools and towns. "Welcome to Operation Last Stand," Kane announced as the truck came to a stop. "Your real education starts now." As Sarah climbed down from the truck, she looked up at the sky one more time. The alien destroyers were clearly visible now, massive dark shapes that seemed to absorb the starlight around them. They hung in the air like harbingers of the end of everything she had ever known. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Sarah Chun felt something besides fear. She felt purpose. Whatever happened in the coming days, she would not face the end of the world passively. She would fight with everything she had, not just for her own survival, but for the future of every person she had ever cared about. The girl who had worried about test scores that morning was gone forever. In her place stood someone ready to become whatever humanity needed her to be. The training facility buzzed with activity 24 hours a day. Sarah had never experienced anything like the intensity that surrounded her now. Sleep came in 3-hour blocks between sessions that pushed every volunteer to their physical and mental limits. The military had condensed months of basic training into a program that transformed civilians into fighters in less than a week. Sarah's hands were raw from weapons handling drills, her body ached from physical conditioning, and her mind reeled from tactical lessons that challenged everything she thought she knew about problem solving. But she was adapting faster than she had ever imagined possible. Chun Rodriguez front and center. Sergeant Major Williams barked across the makeshift firing range. Sarah and Tommy jogged over, their movements now synchronized after days of drilling together. The partnership had surprised everyone, including themselves, the quiet student, and the troublemaker working as a seamless team. "You two have the highest accuracy scores in your group," Williams continued, his weathered face showing a hint of approval. "General Kane wants to see you in briefing room Alpha immediately." Sarah exchanged a glance with Tommy. They had all heard rumors about volunteers who were called to special briefings and never returned to general training. Some said they were being sent on classified missions. Others whispered that the stress had broken them, and they were quietly transferred out. The briefing room was a converted shipping container filled with maps, satellite photos, and computer screens showing data that Sarah couldn't begin to interpret. General Kane stood at the center with several other officers, their faces grim as they studied what appeared to be reconnaissance footage. "Chun, Rodriguez," Kane acknowledged without looking up from the screens. "Your instructors tell me you've mastered the basic systems faster than anyone expected. More importantly, you've shown the kind of innovative thinking we're looking for." Sarah stepped closer to get a better look at the screens. The images showed aerial views of cities she recognized, or what was left of them. Chicago, Houston, Seattle, all partially destroyed by weapons that left perfect circular craters where buildings used to stand. "Sir," Sarah said carefully, "what exactly are you asking us to do?" Kane finally looked at her, and she saw exhaustion in his eyes that went beyond physical fatigue. "We've lost contact with 70% of our military installations. The enemy has some kind of jamming technology that disrupts our communications and targeting systems. But we've identified a pattern in their attacks that might represent a vulnerability." He pointed to one of the screens showing a tactical overlay. "They're systematically destroying infrastructure, but they're doing it in a specific sequence. Military targets first, then government facilities, then population centers. It's methodical, almost programmatic. Like a computer algorithm," Tommy said suddenly. "My dad worked in software before he enlisted. He always said computers are incredibly powerful, but they follow predictable patterns." Kane nodded approvingly. "Exactly. Which means if we can disrupt their sequence, we might be able to create opportunities for counterattacks. But it requires precision, timing, and the ability to operate independently when communications fail." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "You're talking about sending us behind enemy lines." "I'm talking about sending you where our regular forces can't go," Kane corrected. "Small teams, highly mobile, with specific objectives to disrupt their operations at critical moments." Another officer, Colonel Davis, stepped forward with a tablet displaying what looked like building schematics. "We've identified a facility approximately 40 miles northeast of here. Intelligence suggests it's some kind of coordination center the enemy established after securing the area. If we can gather information about their command structure, or better yet, disrupt their operations, we might be able to turn the tide in this sector." Sarah studied the schematics, her mind automatically analyzing the layout and identifying potential approaches. It was a skill she had never known she possessed until the training unlocked it. "What kind of defenses are we looking at?" "Unknown," Davis admitted. "That's part of why we need people who can adapt quickly to unexpected situations. Our conventional scouting methods have proven inadequate against their technology." Tommy frowned. "So you're sending us in blind?" "We're sending you in prepared," Kane corrected firmly. "You'll have the best equipment we can provide, backup support when possible, and, most importantly, the flexibility to make real-time decisions based on what you encounter." Sarah looked at the tactical display again, noting distances, terrain features, and potential extraction points. The logical part of her mind cataloged the enormous risks involved, but another part was already working through possible approaches and contingencies. "When do we leave?" she asked. Kane's expression showed something that might have been relief. "Tonight. But first, you need to understand something about the weapon system you'll be using." He led them to another section of the briefing room, where a rifle case sat on a metal table. When he opened it, Sarah saw an M24 sniper rifle that had been modified with equipment she didn't recognize, additional scopes, electronic components, and what appeared to be some kind of advanced targeting system. "This is a prototype integration of human and captured enemy technology," Kane explained. "Our engineers have been working around the clock to reverse engineer components from downed enemy craft. The result is a weapon system that can penetrate their defensive barriers. Sarah picked up the rifle, surprised by how familiar it felt after days of intensive training. The modifications were extensive, but the basic operation remained the same. How do we know it works? Because you're going to test it, Kane replied. Tomorrow night, there's a supply convoy moving through the sector near your target facility. It's scheduled to pass through a valley where you can establish a position with clear sight lines and multiple escape routes. Your mission is to engage one target and assess the weapon's effectiveness. Tommy whistled low. A field test with live targets. Everything we do now is a field test, son, Kane said grimly. We're fighting a war with technology we don't fully understand against an enemy we know almost nothing about. Every engagement is an experiment that might teach us something crucial for survival. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of final preparations. Sarah memorized maps, studied reconnaissance photos, and practiced with a modified rifle until she could operate it instinctively. The targeting system integrated with a heads-up display that provided range calculations, wind compensation, and threat analysis in real time. But the technology was only part of the equation. Sarah found herself thinking about the philosophical implications of what she was about to do. She had never hurt another person in her life, had never even been in a serious fight. Now, she was preparing to kill beings from another world who might have families, hopes, and dreams just like humans did. Having second thoughts? Tommy asked as they conducted final equipment checks. They were in a supply tent, surrounded by gear that would either keep them alive or become their burial shroud. Third and fourth thoughts, Sarah admitted. But I keep coming back to the same conclusion. They chose to attack us. They chose to destroy our cities and kill our people. Whatever moral complexity the situation might have, they made the first move. Tommy nodded slowly. My little sister is 8 years old. She's in an evacuation center somewhere, probably scared out of her mind. I can't save everyone, but maybe I can do something that makes a difference for her. As darkness fell, they made their final preparations. Sarah's parents still didn't know where she was. Communications had been completely cut off from the civilian evacuation zones. She wondered if they thought she was dead, or if they were holding on to hope that she was safe somewhere. General Kane appeared as they were loading their packs. Chun, Rodriguez, I want you to understand something. What you're about to do is going to change you. Taking a life, even in war, leaves marks that never completely heal. But sometimes those marks are the price we pay for preserving something more important than our own peace of mind. Sarah shouldered her pack and checked her rifle one last time. Sir, if we don't make it back, you will, Kane interrupted, because you're going to be careful, professional, and smart, and because humanity needs you to succeed. The insertion vehicle was a modified military truck with stealth capabilities that rendered it nearly invisible to enemy detection systems. Sarah and Tommy rode in the back with their equipment, watching the landscape roll past through night vision displays. The destruction became more evident as they approached the operational zone. Entire forests had been flattened by weapons that left the ground fused into glass-like surfaces. Farmhouses and small towns were reduced to geometric patterns of debris that suggested methodical demolition rather than random destruction. Jesus, Tommy whispered, staring at what had been a small church. The building was gone, but the outline remained burned into the ground in perfect detail. What kind of weapons do this? Sarah didn't answer because she didn't have words for what she was seeing. The scale of destruction was beyond anything she had imagined possible. It made the task ahead seem simultaneously more important and more hopeless. The truck stopped at their insertion point 3 miles from the target valley. As they gathered their gear, the driver handed Sarah a communications device. Emergency extraction only, he said quietly. This frequency is monitored, but using it will compromise your position to both sides. And then they were alone in the darkness. Moving through enemy-controlled territory required skills that no amount of training could fully prepare them for. Every sound might betray their position. Every shadow could hide threats they couldn't identify. Sarah found herself relying on instincts she didn't know she possessed, reading the environment with senses heightened by adrenaline and fear. It took them 4 hours to reach the observation point overlooking the target valley. The position was perfect, elevated, concealed, with clear sight lines and multiple escape routes, just as Kane had promised. Sarah set up the modified rifle while Tommy established security and communications watch. Through the advanced scope, the valley floor was clearly visible despite the darkness. At precisely 0300 hours, the convoy appeared. Sarah had expected vehicles similar to human military transports. Instead, she saw floating platforms that moved in perfect formation without any visible means of propulsion. Each platform carried equipment that looked more like geometric sculptures than recognizable technology. Target acquired, she whispered into her radio. Beginning assessment. Through the scope's targeting system, she studied the beings operating the convoy. They were humanoid, but clearly not human, taller, with elongated limbs and features that were both familiar and alien. They moved with mechanical precision, no wasted motion or casual interaction. They don't behave like soldiers, she observed quietly. More like workers or technicians. Does that change anything? Tommy asked. Sarah considered the question seriously. These beings might not be warriors in the traditional sense, but they were part of a force that was systematically destroying her world. Whatever their individual role, they were participating in genocide. No, she decided. It doesn't change anything. She selected a target, an individual who appeared to be directing the convoy's movement. The targeting system provided detailed calculations, accounting for distance, environmental factors, and the energy requirements to penetrate what appeared to be some kind of defensive field around the alien. Sarah had fired thousands of practice rounds over the past week, but this felt completely different. Her finger rested on the trigger as she controlled her breathing and heart rate, using techniques that had been drilled into her until they became automatic. The rifle fired with a sound unlike any weapon she had used before, a sharp crack followed by a harmonic hum that seemed to resonate in her bones. The projectile was visible through the scope as a streak of blue-white energy that crossed the distance to the target in less than a second. The impact was devastating. The alien's defensive field flared briefly, then collapsed as the projectile penetrated and struck center mass. The being crumpled instantly, and immediately the entire convoy stopped moving. Target neutralized, Sarah reported, already beginning to pack up the rifle. Enemy response appears confused rather than aggressive. Through the scope, she watched the other aliens gather around their fallen companion. Their movements were erratic, lacking the mechanical precision they had displayed moments before. It was as if the loss of one individual had disrupted their entire operational capability. That's not normal military behavior, Tommy observed. If one of our guys got hit, the rest would take cover and return fire. These things look lost. Sarah was thinking the same thing. The implications were significant. If the alien forces relied on specific individuals for coordination, targeting those individuals might be more effective than trying to destroy their equipment or facilities. As they moved away from the observation point, Sarah felt the weight of what she had just accomplished. She had killed a living being from another world. But she had also demonstrated that these seemingly invincible aliens could be defeated one target at a time. The return journey passed without incident, but Sarah's mind was racing with tactical possibilities. If the aliens operated under a hierarchical system that could be disrupted by precise targeting, small teams like hers might be able to accomplish more than entire conventional military units. When they reached the extraction point, General Kane was waiting with a full debriefing team. Sarah's after-action report was recorded, analyzed, and transmitted to military commands across the remaining free territories. Outstanding work, Kane said as the formal debriefing concluded. Your observations about their command structure align with intelligence we've been gathering from other sources. We're developing a new operational doctrine based on your success. Sarah felt a strange mixture of pride and exhaustion. She had proven that the modified weapons could penetrate alien defenses and that their forces had exploitable vulnerabilities. But she had also crossed a line that she could never uncross. "What's our next mission?" she asked. Kane smiled grimly. "Tomorrow, we're going after that coordination facility. And this time, you won't be going alone." The expanded team consisted of 12 volunteers from 6 different schools, each selected for specific skills that complemented the overall mission. Sarah found herself designated as primary sniper, a role that felt both natural and terrifying. The weight of leadership was something she had never asked for, but the success of her first engagement had marked her as someone others looked to for guidance. Marcus Webb, the former class president, had proven exceptional at tactical planning. Jenny Martinez excelled at communications and electronic warfare. David Kim's background in computer programming made him invaluable for understanding the alien technology they encountered. Together, they formed the core of what General Kane had designated Strike Team Alpha. "The facility is more complex than our initial intelligence suggested," Colonel Davis explained during their final briefing. Three-dimensional holographic displays showed detailed schematics of the target, built from reconnaissance data gathered over the past 72 hours. "We've identified what appears to be a central command structure surrounded by defensive positions and multiple support buildings." Sarah studied the layout, noting sight lines, defensive positions, and potential approach routes. The alien facility looked like nothing human engineers would design. Organic curves instead of straight lines, structures that seemed to flow together rather than being assembled from separate components. "The primary objective remains intelligence gathering," Kane emphasized. "We need to understand how they coordinate their operations across multiple battle zones. Secondary objective is disruption. If you can damage their command capabilities without compromising the primary mission, do it." Tommy raised his hand. "Sir, what about casualties? Both ours and theirs?" Kane's expression was grave. "This is war, Rodriguez. People are going to die. Our job is to make sure the right people die and that their deaths serve a purpose that helps humanity survive." The statement hung heavy in the air. Sarah looked around at her teammates, kids who should have been worrying about college applications and part-time jobs. Instead, they were preparing for a mission that would likely cost some of them their lives. "Equipment check in 30 minutes, Davis announced. "Transport departs at 2,100 hours. Weather conditions are optimal. Moon phase provides adequate concealment." Questions? Sarah had dozens of questions, but none that could be answered until they encountered the actual situation. Modern military doctrine emphasized adaptability and real-time decision-making, skills that their compressed training had focused on developing. The modified weapons had been improved based on data from Sarah's successful engagement. Each team member carried a rifle optimized for their role, long-range precision for the snipers, rapid-fire capability for the assault specialists, and electronic warfare integration for the technical team. The alien technology components were more sophisticated now, providing enhanced targeting and penetration capabilities. As they conducted final equipment checks, Sarah found herself thinking about her parents again. By now, they would have been notified that she was missing from the evacuation centers. They would be told that she was probably dead, killed in the chaos of the initial attacks. In a way, that was true. The person they had raised was gone, replaced by someone capable of killing without hesitation when necessary. The insertion was more complex this time. Instead of a single vehicle drop, they used a combination of ground transport and short-range aircraft that could evade alien detection systems. Sarah found herself squeezed into the back of a stealth helicopter alongside equipment that represented the cutting edge of human technology adapted for alien warfare. Flying over enemy-controlled territory at night was an experience that challenged every assumption Sarah had about modern warfare. Below them, the landscape was dotted with alien installations that glowed with energy signatures unlike anything in human experience. The geometric patterns of destruction were even more apparent from the air. Entire cities reduced to mathematical arrangements of debris. "LZ in sight," the pilot announced through their communication systems. 30 seconds to insertion. The landing zone was a cleared area 2 miles from the target facility. As the helicopter touched down, Sarah felt her training take over. All the fear and uncertainty was pushed into the background, replaced by focus and purpose. She had a job to do, and everything else was secondary. Moving through alien-controlled territory as a larger team required different tactics than Sarah and Tommy had used for their first mission. They moved in formation, maintaining communication through hand signals and short-range encrypted radio when necessary. The alien presence was much more intensive here. Patrols of floating platforms moved through the area on regular schedules, and automated sensors have been placed at strategic locations. David Kim proved invaluable in avoiding the sensor networks. His understanding of electronic systems allowed him to identify the devices and predict their detection patterns. "They're using some kind of electromagnetic scanning," he whispered as they waited for a patrol to pass. "But the patterns suggest they're designed to detect large groups or vehicles, not individual people moving carefully." Sarah filed that information away for future reference. Every detail about alien capabilities was potentially crucial for developing effective countermeasures. It took them 6 hours to reach the observation positions overlooking the target facility. What they saw was both fascinating and terrifying. The alien installation was clearly not built according to human architectural principles. Structures flowed together in organic patterns, and Sarah could see beings moving through transparent tubes that connected different sections of the complex. "My God," Jenny whispered, adjusting her electronic surveillance equipment. "It's like a living organism." Sarah deployed her modified rifle and began systematic observation through the advanced scope. The targeting system was analyzing everything it detected, building a comprehensive picture of the facility's layout and operations. What she saw challenged her understanding of how military installations should function. "There's no obvious defensive perimeter," she reported quietly. "No guard posts, no weapons emplacements. It's like they don't expect to be attacked." Marcus studied the facility through tactical binoculars. That could be arrogance, or it could mean they have defensive systems we can't detect. Through the scope, Sarah watched the aliens going about their activities. They moved with the same mechanical precision she had observed in the convoy, but there were subtle differences. Some individuals appear to have more autonomy than others, making independent decisions and directing the activities of their companions. "I'm seeing a hierarchy," she observed. "Some of them are clearly in charge of others. If we can identify and target the leadership individuals, we might be able to disrupt their entire operation," Tommy finished. Same as what happened with the convoy. Sarah spent the next hour mapping the facility and identifying key targets. The central command structure housed what appeared to be the senior leadership, but reaching it would require penetrating deep into the complex. However, she identified several individuals who appeared to be coordinating activities between different sections of the installation. "I can take out 3 priority targets from this position," she reported, "but we'll need to move fast once I start shooting." Their response pattern from the convoy suggests they'll be confused initially, but they'll adapt quickly. Marcus checked his tactical display. Infiltration team is in position. Electronic warfare team is ready to jam their communications. "Jenny, what's the status on their internal security?" Jenny's equipment was monitoring the alien communication systems. "I'm detecting multiple frequencies, but the encryption is beyond anything I've seen. I can jam them, but I can't decode them." Sarah made her final preparations, selecting targets and calculating firing sequences. The modified rifle felt like an extension of her body now, familiar and reliable. She had become someone she never imagined possible, a precision killer in humanity's war for survival. "All teams stand by," Marcus commanded. "Sniper, you're cleared to engage on your mark." Sarah controlled her breathing and heart rate, finding the calm focus that had become second nature. Through the scope, she could see her first target clearly, an alien individual who appeared to be directing construction activities in the facility's outer sections. The rifle fired with its characteristic harmonic hum, the energy projectile crossing the distance in a flash of blue-white light. The target's defensive field collapsed under the impact, and the being crumpled instantly. Immediately, the activity around it stopped as other aliens gathered around the fallen individual. Target 1 neutralized, Sarah reported, already shifting to her second target. Enemy response confirms previous observations, confusion, and disorientation following command structure disruption. Her second shot took out an individual near the central command structure, and the effect was even more dramatic. Entire sections of the facility seemed to freeze as the aliens struggled to understand what was happening. Infiltration team, execute, Marcus ordered. Sarah watched through her scope as her teammates moved toward the facility. The aliens' confusion worked in their favor, but she knew it wouldn't last long. She continued providing overwatch, ready to engage any threats that emerged. David Kim's voice came over the radio as he reached one of the outer structures. I'm accessing their computer systems. These interfaces are unlike anything in human technology, but the basic principles seem universal. What are you finding? Marcus asked. Command protocols, facility layouts, and Jesus Christ. This isn't just a coordination center. They're using it to process humans. Sarah felt her blood freeze. What do you mean process? They're holding areas filled with people, David replied, his voice tight with horror. They're not killing prisoners, they're studying them. Biological analysis, behavioral observation, some kind of systematic cataloging of human capabilities. The revelation changed everything. This wasn't just a military target. It was a research facility where humans were being held as test subjects. The mission parameters had just become personal for everyone involved. New objective, Marcus announced. We rescue the prisoners. Negative, came Kane's voice over the long-range radio. Mission parameters remain unchanged. Intelligence gathering is the priority. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. Those were real people down there, possibly including individuals from their own communities. The idea of leaving them to continue being experimented on was intolerable. Sir, respectfully, fuck the mission parameters, Jenny said over the radio. We're not leaving Americans behind. Martinez, watch your language and remember your discipline, Kane replied, but his tone suggested he understood their emotional response. Sarah made a decision that would define the rest of her life. General, I'm engaging additional targets to support prisoner extraction. Those people down there deserve the same chance we're fighting for. Without waiting for authorization, she began systematically targeting every alien individual she could identify as having command authority. The facility's coordinated activities collapsed into chaos as the leadership structure was eliminated. Sniper, cease fire immediately, Kane ordered. You're compromising the mission. No, sir, Sarah replied calmly, continuing to fire. I'm completing the mission. We came here to fight for humanity's survival. That includes the humans being held in this facility. Her teammates on the ground took advantage of the chaos she was creating. David accessed the facility's security systems and began opening containment areas. Jenny jammed alien communication systems to prevent them from calling for reinforcements. Marcus coordinated the extraction of prisoners who began emerging from hidden sections of the complex. Sarah provided continuous overwatch, eliminating threats as they appeared. The modified rifle performed flawlessly, each shot disrupting alien defensive systems and neutralizing targets with precision that would have been impossible with conventional weapons. Prisoners secured, Marcus reported after 20 minutes of intense action. 17 humans recovered, all alive but in various states of physical and psychological trauma. As the team began their extraction, Sarah noticed movement in the facility's central command structure. Through her scope, she could see an alien individual who was clearly different from the others, larger, with more complex equipment, and movements that suggested higher intelligence and authority. This was the facility commander, and it was attempting to activate some kind of emergency protocol. Sarah adjusted her aim and fired her most precise shot of the mission. The energy projectile penetrated multiple defensive barriers and struck the command individual center mass. The effect was immediate. Every system in the facility began shutting down, and the remaining aliens seemed to lose all coordination and purpose. "Target facility neutralized," she reported, withdrawing to extraction point. As they moved away from the alien installation, Sarah helped carry one of the rescued prisoners, a middle-aged man who appeared to be in shock, but physically unharmed. He kept repeating the same words over and over. "They wanted to understand us. They kept asking how humans could be so unpredictable." The extraction helicopter was waiting at the designated coordinates, and as they lifted off, Sarah got her last view of the alien facility. It was dark now, its organic architecture looking more like a corpse than a living structure. They had struck a significant blow against the enemy, but she knew it was only one installation among many. During the flight back to base, General Kane's voice came over the radio. "Strike Team Alpha. Be advised that your unauthorized modification of mission parameters is being reviewed by Command Authority. However, preliminary assessment indicates that your actions have provided valuable intelligence about enemy operations and capabilities." Sarah keyed her radio. "Sir, with respect, if following orders means abandoning people to alien experimentation, then I'll take unauthorized actions every time." Kane was quiet for a long moment. "Chin, your response is noted and understood. Debrief begins immediately upon return to base." As the helicopter carried them back to safety, Sarah looked at her teammates. They had all changed during the mission, becoming something harder and more determined. The rescued prisoners were evidence that their actions had meaning beyond military objectives. But Sarah also knew that their success would lead to more dangerous missions. The war was far from over, and humanity needed every advantage they could gain. She had proven that small teams using adapted technology could strike significant blows against seemingly superior alien forces. The question was whether they could do it enough times and quickly enough to turn the tide of a war that had begun with humanity's near extinction. Sarah Chun, the quiet student who had worried about test scores a week ago, was now a veteran combat sniper with confirmed kills against extraterrestrial enemies. The transformation was complete and irreversible, and it was only the beginning. 3 weeks after the research facility raid, Sarah stood in what had once been the Pentagon Situation Room, now relocated to a hardened bunker 50 feet underground. Around the table sat the remaining leadership of Earth's defense forces, generals, scientists, and strategists who represented humanity's last organized resistance against the alien occupation. The rescued prisoners had provided intelligence that changed everything humanity thought they knew about their enemy. The aliens weren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They were scientists conducting a massive experiment with Earth as their laboratory and humans as their test subjects. The data we've recovered indicates that this is not their first time conducting this type of study. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the chief xenobiologist, explained to the assembled leadership. They've done this before to other species on other worlds. They're trying to understand what they call chaotic intelligence, the unpredictable creativity that allows some species to develop beyond their technological limitations. General Kane leaned forward, his expression grim. "So we're rats in a maze. More accurately, we're specimens in a behavioral study," Dr. Warren corrected. "They're documenting how humans respond to existential threats, how we adapt our technology, and how we organize resistance movements. Every action we take provides them with data about our species' capabilities." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground facility's temperature. "Are you saying that fighting back is exactly what they want us to do?" "Fighting back effectively is what they don't expect," Dr. Warren replied. "Their previous subjects apparently followed more predictable patterns. Humans are proving to be problematic for their research parameters." Marcus Webb, now promoted to lieutenant and serving as tactical coordinator, studied the intelligence reports. "If they're studying us, then they must have some kind of central data collection system, something that processes all the information they're gathering. That's correct, Dr. Warren confirmed. Based on the computer systems David accessed, they're transmitting all observational data to what appears to be a primary research vessel positioned outside Earth's atmosphere. Sarah's mind immediately grasped the implications. If we could access that vessel, we could understand the full scope of their research. Maybe even learn about other species they've studied. Kane nodded slowly. The question is how we reach a target in space when they've neutralized most of our orbital capabilities. David Kim had been quietly working at a computer terminal throughout the briefing. Now, he looked up with an expression of intense concentration. I've been analyzing the communication protocols we captured from the facility. They're not just transmitting data to space. They're receiving instructions, real-time guidance on how to modify their experiments based on our responses. Which means they have some kind of automated analysis system, Jenny added, looking up from her own workstation where she monitored alien communication intercepts. If their research is being directed by artificial intelligence rather than biological entities, that might explain the mechanical behavior we've observed. Sarah felt pieces clicking together in her mind. The confusion we cause when we eliminate their command individuals, it's not just leadership disruption. We're breaking their connection to the central intelligence that's coordinating the entire experiment. Kane's eyes sharpened. Are you suggesting that their ground forces are essentially remote-controlled? More like guided, Sarah replied, her training in tactical analysis helping her organize the concepts. They have individual autonomy for basic functions, but their strategic decisions are being influenced by constant communication with their research vessel. Dr. Warren pulled up a holographic display showing the alien communication networks they had mapped. If that's accurate, then severing that connection might cause widespread disruption across all their operations. But only temporarily, Marcus pointed out, they would eventually adapt and establish alternative communication methods. Sarah studied the network display, noting patterns in the signal distribution. An idea was forming, dangerous, probably impossible, but potentially decisive if it could be executed successfully. What if we don't just sever the connection, she said slowly. What if we replace it? The room fell silent as everyone grasped the implications of what she was suggesting. You're talking about hacking their central intelligence system, David said, his voice tight with excitement and fear. Using their own communication network to send false instructions to their ground forces. It's theoretically possible, Dr. Warren admitted, but it would require physical access to their primary research vessel. And even if we could reach it, we don't fully understand their technology. Kane was already moving to the tactical displays. How'll we get there? They've destroyed our space program infrastructure and maintain air superiority across most of the globe. Sarah had been thinking about that problem for weeks, ever since learning about the research vessel. We don't go to them. We make them come to us. She moved to the display controls and began highlighting installations across North America. They're studying human behavior under extreme stress. What would create more stress than a coordinated assault on multiple critical targets simultaneously? You're talking about bait, Marcus realized. Make ourselves look like such a significant threat that they have to respond with their primary assets. Exactly. But not just any bait. We need to threaten something they can't afford to lose. Sarah's finger traced patterns on the tactical display. Their ground installations aren't just research facilities. They're also processing centers for the data they're collecting. If we threaten to destroy their accumulated research, they'll have to protect it. Kane studied the proposed target list. Coordinating simultaneous assaults across this geographic area would require resources we don't have. Most of our remaining forces are defending civilian evacuation zones. We don't need large forces, Sarah replied. We've proven that small teams using adapted technology can achieve strategic objectives. A dozen teams like Strike Team Alpha could create enough chaos to trigger the response we're looking for. Dr. Warren looked skeptical. Even if you could lure their research vessel into the atmosphere, how would you access it? These beings possess technology centuries beyond our current capabilities. Sarah turned to David Kim. You said their ground systems use universal computing principles. Would the same apply to their primary vessel? David considered the question carefully. Computing architecture tends to follow logical patterns regardless of the species that develops it. If I could get close enough to interface with their systems, I might be able to establish access. But the security protocols would be exponentially more sophisticated than anything we've encountered. So we need time, Sarah said. Time for you to work while their attention is focused elsewhere. You're talking about a diversion, Jenny realized. Something dramatic enough to keep them busy while David infiltrates their central system. Sarah nodded, her mind working through the tactical requirements. A direct assault on their research vessel, using all the adaptive technology we've developed. Not to destroy it, we need it functional, but to create enough chaos and damage that their defensive systems are overwhelmed. Kane stared at her for a long moment. Chen, what you're describing is essentially a suicide mission. The research vessel would have defensive capabilities we can't even imagine. Not suicide, Sarah corrected. Calculated risk with acceptable odds of success. We've learned enough about their technology to know they rely heavily on predictable tactical responses. A direct assault is the one thing they wouldn't expect from humans who have been avoiding open confrontation. Marcus was already analyzing the logistics. We need to identify the exact location of the research vessel and time our assault to coincide with the ground operations. Coordination would be critical. I could track their orbital position using the communication intercepts Jenny offered. If we can predict where they'll be when they respond to the ground threats, we can position ourselves accordingly. Kane looked around the table at the faces of the young people who had become humanity's most effective weapons against extinction. This is beyond anything we've attempted before. The risk level is enormous, and if we fail, we lose our most experienced operators. If we don't try, we lose anyway, Sarah pointed out. They're studying us to understand how to eliminate species like ours more efficiently. Every day we wait, they learn more about our capabilities and limitations. Eventually, they'll have enough data to conclude their experiment and finish what they started. The weight of that reality settled over the room. This was their chance to take control of their own fate, to stop being test subjects and become active participants in determining humanity's survival. I need 48 hours to coordinate with remaining command authorities, Kane said finally. If we're going to do this, it has to be perfect. No second chances, no backup plans. As the meeting broke up, Sarah found herself alone with her thoughts for the first time in weeks. The magnitude of what they were planning was staggering. Success would mean saving not just humanity, but potentially providing other species with the knowledge they needed to resist similar experiments. Failure would mean the end of everything they had fought for. But as she thought about her parents, her friends, and all the people who had been killed or captured during the alien occupation, she realized there was no real choice involved. Someone had to take the risk, and she had become someone capable of taking it. 2 days later, Sarah stood in the loading bay of a modified military aircraft that human engineers had adapted with captured alien technology. Around her, the members of Strike Team Alpha conducted final equipment checks on gear that represented the pinnacle of human adaptive engineering. The plan was elegantly simple and impossibly complex. 12 teams would simultaneously assault alien installations across North America, creating enough disruption to force their research vessel into the atmosphere. When it arrived, Sarah's team would board it using a combination of human aerospace technology and alien transportation systems they had reverse engineered. David would hack their central intelligence system, while Sarah and the others kept their security forces occupied. If everything went perfectly, they would be able to turn the aliens' own communication network against them, disrupting the coordination of their global operations and buying humanity time to mount a more comprehensive resistance. If anything went wrong, they would all die, and humanity would lose its best hope for survival. 30 minutes to insertion, the pilot announced over the aircraft's communication system. Sarah checked her rifle one last time. The weapon had been upgraded again, now incorporating alien technology that allowed it to function in the zero-atmosphere environment of the research vessel. She had become an expert with equipment she couldn't have imagined a month ago, fighting a war that redefined everything humanity thought possible. As the aircraft approached the coordinates where the alien research vessel was predicted to appear, Sarah looked out at the darkened landscape below. Cities that had once blazed with light were now dark ruins. Millions of people had died or disappeared during the occupation, and millions more were hiding in evacuation centers, waiting to learn if they would have a future. Everything came down to the next few hours. Research vessel detected, Jenny announced from her monitoring station. Right on schedule, descending to investigate the ground assaults. Through the aircraft's windows, Sarah could see it, a massive structure that defied every principle of aerodynamics, hanging in the air like a geometric storm cloud. It was beautiful and terrifying, representing intelligence and capability beyond human experience. Remember, Sarah addressed her team as they prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. We're not just fighting for ourselves. Every choice they've forced us to make, every person we've lost, every sacrifice we've endured, it's all led to this moment. We're going to show them what chaotic intelligence really means. As their aircraft approached the alien research vessel, Sarah felt the familiar calm focus of combat settling over her mind. She was no longer the frightened girl who had hidden in a school gymnasium 4 weeks ago. She was humanity's best hope, and she was ready to either save her species or die trying. The battle for Earth's future was about to begin, and Sarah Chun would be the one to fire the first shot.